partridge, right? Okay. This meeting is called to order at 6 o'clock. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. We are being televised live over Van Buren Channel 12. We are also on YouTube, and if you want to watch YouTube tomorrow or a month from now, you can always just put in Van Buren Government. We will be having an update later on from our attorney on the radioactive lawsuit, and I understand people are looking forward to watching that on YouTube, so I just want to make sure that's there. Deputy Clerk, could you call the roll?
Trustee Boyan.
Here.
Trustee Martin.
Here.
Supervisor McNamara.
Here.
Clerk Wright is excused. Treasurer Budd.
Here.
Trustee Frazier.
Here.
And Trustee Kelly is excused.
Yes. Okay, excellent. The executive summary today, we're first of all going to do our consent agenda, which consists of our board meeting minutes, our prepaid list, and our voucher list, basically paying our everyday bills like the electric bill. The new business today includes a discussion on the first reading of an ordinance to amend zoning of exterior commercial lighting standards for public safety. Discussion on the first reading of an ordinance to amend zoning to reduce setback requirements for monument signs in residential developments to be based on the number of entrances. And discussion on change order number 1 for the Tyler Road Sidewalk Project in the amount of $65,000. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Through the chair, make a motion, we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Who supported? Me. Martin, thank you. All right, I've got a motion by Treasurer Budd, supported by Trustee Martin, to adopt the agenda. Hearing no discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is adoption of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion? Trustee Boynton? Would you like to make the consent agenda?
I was just teasing you. Through the chair, I move that we grant approval of the consent agenda, which consists of the following: board meeting minutes of May 20th, the prepaid lists of May 22nd and May 29th, the voucher list of June 2nd, all of 2025.
Can I get a second?
Support.
Second by Bud. I have a motion by Trustee Boynton, supported by Treasurer Budd. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? This motion passes. Next item today is the public hearing, which we have none. We are now into correspondence, announcements, and presentations. Is there anybody from the board that wants to make any announcements? I'm just remembering an old announcement. I want to say congratulations to the girls' basketball team at Belleville High. I heard they were amazing. And I bring that up because I read in the Free Press where the boys' track just annihilated everybody at the States. And they had 2 guys running the 110-meter hurdles. Did you read this? So we had 2 guys running the 110-meter hurdles. They came in 1, 2, and they both set state records. So, and then they went on to win the 300 relay and the 400 relay and everything out there. They crushed the records. It was I've heard that they're really good. They must be spectacular. So, Congratulations.
Talking about having to put a new cabinet in for all these trophies.
Yeah, yeah. When I talked to people about programs. I mean, there's nothing like Van Buren Public Schools programs. They're incredible, from robotics, and the athletics program is just second to none. It's just,
A.D. Brody does a great job.
yeah, it's getting to be known throughout not just the state, but people realize it. I also want to add that the Belleville Area Museum, I'll start off with they're going to have one of their lectures, 6 to 7 on Thursday, June 26th. Thursday, June 26th, from 6 to 7, Pete's at 5:30. The Wayne Historical Museum Director, Tyler Mall, will be sharing dating techniques so you can date your houses, figuring out the identity and the age of your local homes. It includes using things like stylistic evidence, deeds, tax records, maps, and many other available resources. And most of those resources are also at the museum. So if you want to figure out how old your house is, that's a great thing to go to. Those lecture series are very well attended, and it is free. And I don't know if we can see this, but my director in the back is wearing one. The lake is 100 years old, yay. And the Belleville Area Museum and the Community Services Group is selling 100-year-old lake t-shirts and purses and knapsacks and coffee mugs and other memorabilia for 100-year-old Belleville Lake. They're selling it at the museum. They're also going to be selling it at the farmer's market from 4 to 7 on Saturday? Monday. I'm sorry, Monday. Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any announcements? No? Does anybody from out there have any presentations or announcements? Nope. Okay. All right, moving on to public comment. We're in public comment. Does anybody from the public wish to speak on any matters that are before the board today? Nope. Nope. All right. All right. Moving on then. Unfinished business, we have none. New business. Line item number 1 is discussion on and to consider approval of a first reading of a new ordinance to amend the township zoning ordinance for exterior commercial lighting standards for public safety. Can I get a motion?
Through the chair. I move to approve the reading of ordinance 06-03-25, number 1, an amendment to the township's zoning ordinance for exterior commercial lighting standards for public safety.
Support. Trustee Martin. Director Akers.
Thank you. Over the past several months, staff has noted that the illumination standards in our zoning ordinance are not adequate to address certain public safety concerns. And as a result, the Planning Commission had recommended adoption of changes to the township's exterior lighting standards, focusing on the allowable illumination levels for specific uses or areas of a property. Primary changes in the code are related to definitions of various ways to measure light intensity, changes to the maximum level of illumination to allow greater lighting levels, and the additions of guidelines for light color. In addition to this, there were some clarifications added to the ordinance where we exempt pedestrian walkway accent lighting and exempt illuminating the United States flag. A public hearing for this amendment was held at the May 14th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting where no comments from the public were heard, and the Planning Commission recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the amendment. This concludes my summary, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Be more specific. Why are we changing it?
We've had a number of site plans that have come through where they've wanted greater illumination levels than what our zoning ordinance allows.
Okay.
And so it's happened a couple different times. And so because of that, we went back through and audited our code based on some other communities and found that our levels were lower than they should have been.
Okay. Any questions? I have a motion for a first reading by Trustee Boynton and supported by Trustee Martin. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Director. Next item is discussion on and to consider approval of another first reading of an ordinance, an amendment to the township zoning ordinance to reduce the setback requirements for monument signs within residential developments and specifying the requirements to quantity to be based on number of entrances. Sorry. Can I get a motion?
To the chair, I would like to consider approval of the first reading of ordinance 060325, number 2, and amendment to the township zoning ordinance to reduce the setback requirement for monument signs within residential developments and specify the requirements to qualify to be based on the number of entrances.
Director, I need support.
Support with the correction of qualified to quantity to be based on number of entrances.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Director Akers.
During the course of recent site plan reviews, we became aware of issues related to setbacks related to ground size for residential developments. Based on this, the zoning ordinance changes were prepared, focusing on minimum setbacks and location requirements for residential monument signs. Main change was that the minimum setback was reduced to 10 feet from 30 feet for monument signs for residential developments. This would make it consistent with our commercial standards. This will allow for better visibility of the signage and limit any unsafe conditions that can be caused from entrance signage that is not visible. The public hearing for this amendment was held at the 5/14/2025 Planning Commission meeting where no comments from the public were heard, and the Planning Commission recommended the Board of Trustees approve the amendment. Concludes my summary. I'm happy to answer any questions.
1 second, point of order. Deputy Clerk, was there a problem with the motion?
I'm just trying to clarify what he changed it to, that's all.
He didn't, he just, okay.
I didn't. He
Let me reread it.
No, would you accept his amendment? You have to accept his amendment of your amendment. He accepts it, you accept it, we're good. Okay. So, yeah, he just misread one word. Okay, so, so currently, our subdivision signs is what you're talking about?
Yes, so for commercial and industrial properties, we allow monument signs up at the frontage to identify the site and the entrances to where the site is. Our current standards have those signs, they can be set back they're required to be set back at least 10 feet from the road right-of-way line. For residential developments, for some reason in our code, the setback was listed at 30 feet from the right-of-way line as the minimum setback. So what this does is for residential developments, it takes that setback and brings it to 10.
So, the middle of the road, out 30 feet is an easement, and then another 10 feet for the monument sign. Okay, got it, because I was thinking it was too close to the road, you couldn't see around it. Okay, you can see around those.
So what this will do is it will bring those residential monument signs closer to the road so you can see them.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I got a motion by trustee Frazier, supported by trustee Boynton. Hearing no further discussion on the first reading, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. How much more do we got here?
Got one more.
Well, let's go for it. Okay, next item. Discussion on and to consider approval of change order number 1 for the Tyler Road Sidewalk Project in an amount of $65,069.
Through the chair.
Trustee Martin.
Make a motion to consider approval of change order number 1 for the Tyler Road Sidewalk Project in the amount of $65,069.60.
Thank you. Bud, Treasurer Bud. Okay, Director Akers.
So at the May 6, 2025 Township Board meeting, the contract for the Tyler Road Sidewalk Gap Project was approved. We discussed adding some additional sidewalk replacements along the Tyler Road corridor because the project came in under our original estimates, and we had additional funding that we could use for the project through the Wayne County CDBG program. Due to this, Fishbeck and Township staff walked along the existing sidewalk on the corridor and identified several areas where the sidewalk could be replaced. These included the entirety in front of the ITC corridor and then select areas in front of Parkwood and Hickory Woods. In addition to this, we have added some concrete driveway work, so there are some approaches and areas just to the north of the sidewalk to make sure that we are protecting the sidewalk from damage from vehicles entering and leaving the driveway. These additional funds will be included in the scope of the approved project and will be eligible for reimbursement. The total amount that the township was approved for the grant was $300,000. This change order would bring the total of the project cost to $244,870. There were no other areas that we determined that needed additional sidewalk work within the scope of the project area, so that was us maxing out what we could do. So based on that, we recommend moving forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Got no questions. All right, thank you. All right, I have a motion by trustee Martin. I have support by treasurer Bud. I have no questions, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This motion passes. We're going to continue on. We're now into reports, which we have none. We're now into public comment. And normally I would call up do either one of you want to do public comment or just, didn't think so. Brandon, come on up. We need you at the microphone. Brandon Grisco is our attorney. He's, as they say in Harvard, and I'm sure Judge Martin remembers, like wicked smart. We've been doing very well in that lawsuit. It was slated to be a short one, and it's lasted quite a while, but that's okay. We're doing very well. And he's here to give you an update.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor McNamara, for having me, and the Board of Trustees. I want to say hello. Nice to meet you. Most of you I don't think I've met before, but it's nice to be here in person with you and put some faces and names together and things like that. So the law firm of Fosson and Grisco, which is the firm of which I'm managing partner, has been handling on behalf of the township and Belleville and Canton and Romulus the Wayne disposal litigation, of which I'm sure not only you, but also the citizens are very much so aware. And so as the board probably also is aware, that case is still going on. So while I do want to provide an update, and I did plan to do so within the public sphere today, there's certain things strategy-wise and stuff like that that I just simply won't comment on. And mostly this is intended to be sort of a factual presentation, just sort of a roadmap, I guess, of sort of how we got to where we are and what the next steps are. And Supervisor McNamara, if I'm taking too long on anything, you feel free just to move me right along.
We're literally 16 minutes into a meeting that could go 2 hours, and we've only got about 3 minutes after you. So take your time.
Very good, very good. I appreciate that. And so I do, of course, want to thank the board for having our firm represent the township in this matter, and the citizens, the taxpayers, ultimately are the ones footing the bill for this. So we certainly appreciate their confidence in us as well. So as you're all aware, we filed this lawsuit in September 2024. The case is still active. So how did this case develop? Late in August of 2024, news broke that Wayne Disposal was intending on bringing in some Manhattan Project waste from New York. Shortly thereafter, a town hall was held. Many local officials were there. I'm sure many of you may have been there as well. And representatives from Eagle, it's the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, were there. I believe there was an Army Corps representative there, and probably people from Republic Services as well. And at this meeting, it seems that Eagle and Republic Services had sort of indicated, hey, we've kind of been doing this, taking in T-norm technologically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive material for a number of years without incident. At least that's their allegation. And so consequently, I think there was a sense in which they felt, what's the big deal kind of thing. Well, the community obviously felt that was a big deal. Multiple communities did, as a matter of fact. And so on September 16th, our firm filed a lawsuit in the Third Circuit Court of Wayne County. I'll talk a little bit about the complaint and what that looks like in a moment here. But the intention with that lawsuit was to challenge their ability to do this without public input and things of that nature. The full complaint with exhibits was like 64 pages or something like that, so I'm not going to go into great detail on that. But it was an important first step to take. Now, the information in the media at the time was that this waste was maybe going to be in the ground essentially sometime within a few months, maybe after kind of this initial town hall. And so anybody that's been involved in litigation, and I'm sure the township has, is probably well aware that these sorts of things can drag on for a year or 2 years or something like that. So we knew that as a matter of legal strategy, if we were not able to put a stop to this on the front end of the case, then chances are that, if there was a victory at the end of the case, that this waste stream would already essentially be here. So what we did was filed a motion for a temporary restraining order, essentially asking the judge to agree on the front end of the case that our position was strong enough and that we were likely enough to succeed, that he would enter an injunction essentially to stop the waste from coming in. And so just a few days after the case was filed, Judge Cox in the Third Circuit Court did actually enter a temporary restraining order, sort of a large early victory in the sense that these sorts of motions aren't necessarily granted as a matter of routine, as a matter of course. So, there was some significant effort that went into that. And we thank the township staff and those from other communities as well that submitted affidavits in support of that motion, and supported us in gathering the appropriate documentation and things that we needed for that. Just to take a sort of a bird's eye view of the complaint that was filed in that case, the first count was a nuisance count under the Michigan Fire Protection Code. So Chief McNally from the Van Buren Township Fire Department is authorized to enforce the state fire code, and we had discussed it and determined that there were some real hazards involved with this type of waste. And I won't say, everything that's in the complaint. It's there for anybody that wants to read it. But a couple issues of note is that the fire department hasn't had, in some sense, the training and the equipment to respond to a radiological incident. And then in addition to that, there's access issues with the site itself that need to be abated. And so that was one count. And another count in the complaint was a public nuisance count alleging that Wayne Disposal is essentially interfering unreasonably so with rights that the public has. So some of those may include, the public has a right to comment on the Wayne Disposal license. And if this were allowed to simply continue on, that waste would already be in the ground potentially before the public even has an opportunity to comment on the Wayne Disposal license that's now been expired for a couple of years. And they're operating provisionally based on their submissions to Eagle and things like that. The communities involved have the right to keep their citizens safe. The citizens have the right to be free from certain types of risk. And so we felt that this presented a case where a public nuisance would be appropriate. And so that's the thrust of the complaint, in addition to requesting a general injunction against this sort of activity. So this was sort of a sprint. So getting all this done happened very, very quickly. The town hall was September 4th. I think the complaint was filed on September 16th, and then the TRO was entered just a couple days after that. And then, of course, they're not going to take it lying down, and so almost immediately they file an emergency motion to dissolve that temporary restraining order on a Thursday, and on an emergency basis, the court scheduled that for a hearing on the following Monday. So things happening very quickly here. We responded to that. Ultimately, the judge set us up for an evidentiary hearing. And as everybody, I think, is aware, that hearing ended up actually not happening for a number of months, in some cases due to Wayne Disposal's own actions. So there was an evidentiary hearing scheduled for October. Okay, on the eve of that hearing, Wayne Disposal, I guess, felt like that their chances maybe would be better in federal court, and so they filed a notice with the state court that basically paused the case in the state court and sent us off to federal court, where they then refiled essentially their emergency motion to have the restraining order dissolved. And so we had to then also respond to that. And ultimately, due to the authorization and the quick action that we got from our plaintiff communities, we were able to get that case remanded back to state court, back in front of Judge Kevin Cox in the Third Circuit, but not until, I think it was the week of Thanksgiving or something like this in 2024 that we were finally able to do that. And so then instead of just proceeding to the evidentiary hearing, which it seemed like we all knew was inevitable, Wayne Disposal filed a motion to dismiss the case. And, these types of motions, it takes months and months sometimes for a judge to hear. And so Judge Cox had scheduled us for a hearing in February of 2025. So now we've got from December all the way to February. And in the meanwhile, the restraining order that we had, the injunction that we had, has remained in place this whole time. Normally, a temporary restraining order is like a 2-week window, so it was quite a feat to have it last so long in the first place. But once that motion for summary disposition to dismiss the case was briefed up, we went down and argued that in front of Judge Cox. He ruled from the bench, denying their motion, allowing the case to continue, and then scheduled us for May 19th and May 20th hearing dates, which was the evidentiary hearing on the injunction. So although we've referred to it in correspondence and things like that as a trial, and it was very much like a trial, probably 100 exhibits and 4,000 pages of documents involved. But it was essentially a hearing in order for the judge to determine whether or not there's sufficient evidence for the injunction to remain in effect. And so during the pendency of all this, it continues to remain in effect. So where we're at right now is that, and I'm going to summarize some things from the hearing, but where we're at right now and what the next steps are is that we did 2 full days of hearing on May 19th and May 20th between the communities that our firm represents and Wayne County, who intervened in the case and is represented by a different law firm. We put on about 6 witnesses, and then Wayne Disposal on the second day primarily put on 3 witnesses or so. And I'm going to summarize some of that testimony in just a moment here. But at this point, the next steps are that the judge has ordered some additional briefing, if you will, essentially asking the parties to put together proposals for him to consider as far as some things that his order may contain. And so we have a deadline coming up sort of late to mid-June on that, and then we're going to return to the court on July 1st for closing arguments, essentially, where we will sort of summarize our position to the judge, let him know which exhibits we think he should be looking at and things like that. So with that said, I did want to just briefly talk about some of the witnesses that testified at the hearing and some things that we learned from that. First is the Wayne County former public health official, Dr. Al Sayed, who testified, did a good job and testified from a public health standpoint as far as the risks to this population within the Wayne County area, within the Van Buren area, and just the general sense, if any, that it made to put a waste stream like this in an area as populous as Wayne County. We also identified as a witness Dr. Kierfat from the University of Michigan, who's an expert and a scientist in the field of nuclear radiation. And so she appeared also and testified as to the risks associated with this type of radiological material, T-norm. Sorry, hold on one second. Particularly as would seem to be common sense that, your exposure sort of and your risk goes up the more of a thing that you have. And so I think she did a good job as an expert sort of explaining to the judge those sorts of issues. Other witnesses included Almika Steele, a county drain commissioner, who testified concerning, the waterways in the area and things of that nature, the public drains and things like that. Samar Jafer, who's with Wayne County Homeland Security, Chief McNally, the fire chief here in Van Buren, and then Mayor Voigt from Belleville also testified. And those were the witnesses that testified on behalf of the plaintiff communities. And then on behalf of Wayne Disposal, they subpoenaed Liz Brown, who's a director level official with Eagle, to testify. We did cross-examine her fairly aggressively, but some of the information that came out of that, a point of note would be that the soonest that they would do a public hearing at this point would be August on the Wayne Disposal license. That was from her testimony and her cross-examination. At this point, that actually looks rather dubious because they were talking about having a town hall first, then releasing a draft permit, and then scheduling the public comment period and the public hearing. So whether or not there's sufficient time for all that to occur between now and August, I actually think like we might be looking later in the year even as far as when that public hearing could occur. But obviously we don't know that for sure. Wayne Disposal also put up a contractor who's responsible for remediating the New York site. And one of the interesting pieces of testimony there was regards to how the site was selected. And some of this information, I think, was floating around out there, maybe a little less concrete from the town hall. But the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have 5 sites in the country that they could send this type of waste to. And so they identified, according to this witness, those sites. And then the folks that were bidding on the project to do the New York site remediation actually costed out and then selected which site they were going to go to. So we can't say that it was a pure economic decision. That wasn't what the testimony suggested. But certainly cost was a factor, and the witness acknowledged that cost was a factor in their selection of that site, and that, you know, population density and things like that were not necessarily factors for consideration. Interesting to note, upsetting probably for the board and for the community. And then there were 2 employees from Public Services also who testified, largely concerning testing that they're doing and safety measures that they're taking and things like this. Mostly things that we would sort of already expect for them to have testified to. I'm sure much of it was in line with things that were said at the town hall. But I will say that the first time that I've officially heard this from anybody, I think, was when one of their Public Services employees was on the stand, and they acknowledged to me on cross-examination that they can take through Michigan Disposal, which is sort of a related entity on the site there within the same footprint, also owned by our Public Services, that they can take waste levels that have higher levels of radiation than what T-norm would have, and they simply aggregate it and dilute it at Michigan Disposal, and then it could potentially be disposed of still within the landfill site. So they didn't necessarily say that this has happened before, that it did happen. I'd have to go back and check my notes on that, but it certainly is a possibility given what Michigan Disposal is doing on the site there. So the judge was fairly shocked when this information came out, but it remains to be seen what impact that's going to have, obviously. And to kind of wrap this up, and if the board has questions, I'd of course be happy to take those to the extent I can answer them. You know, in litigation, in any type of litigation, a court can always go either way. So can't necessarily predict what the outcome is going to be. You know, I think as attorneys, we've all won cases that maybe we shouldn't have won, and we've all lost cases that we probably should have won. So we just don't know how a judge is going to rule in any particular instance. But the communities have put on a case, a good case. WDI has attempted to counter some of those points, but it's far from over. And I think I already said we're going to be back in front of the judge on July 1st for closing arguments, oral arguments on whether or not the injunction should be continued until the conclusion of the case. Some potential outcomes we could see: the judge could rule from the bench, which means that we have an answer same day. The judge could take the matter under advisement, as they say, in which case we would expect a ruling from the judge at some point in the future. Would not be surprised if, really either way, but wouldn't be surprised if it was taken under advisement because there is a voluminous record involved here. There will be a lot of material for the court and staff to go through prior to making a decision. So the judge could say yay or nay, but in either case, we'll have to wait to find out, and we continue to represent the community aggressively in that litigation, and we'll plan to do so at the closing arguments on July 1st as well. So that was a roadmap, what to expect, and we thank you for your trust. It's been a privilege and an honor to represent and continue to represent these communities. I know this is a very important case for this community, and we just thank you for your confidence and your trust in us.
Normally we do questions, but I'm not sure that that's appropriate in this situation. Okay, good. Since we are still in a lawsuit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming out here, and I think you've done a very good job, and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to move on to additional public comment. Does anybody from the public wish to speak on any matters in front of the board?
Hi there, I'm Anne Marie Stevens of Van Buren Township. Bear with me, I'm going to cry, but I am just so appalled that any of this have come out. Finding out that the Army Corps of Engineers have known that they're going to move this waste for so long and that the government hasn't gone and made someplace safe for all this away from populations. I mean, I know we don't want to be dumped here. New York doesn't want to be dumped there. Nobody else wants this population. According to Dr. Sayed, you know, technologies have changed. They've learned new things over that time. Our waste management's been here for lots of time, you know, a long, long time. I question, you know, they keep talking about a little liner that's going to go in. We've got leaching, we've got fresh water, we've got so much technology, and it's an older technology. I don't know if any upgrades have been done or what's been going on, but it's very crucial, you know, if this gets in, we're just completely in trouble. I know I was at the trial and Dr. Kimberly Kafort talked about volume. It doesn't matter. You know, we learned about the Michigan disposal and how they're, you know, have the technology to down blend and they can accept any kind of quality, which goes right next door. And she talked about volume and how it doesn't matter if, you know, we've got one little bucket or, you know, we down blend it and we've got all this radionuclei all over. It's still the same amount of radionuclei, and we need to be concerned about that going in. And I'm still very surprised at how many people don't know about what is going on here in Van Buren Township. And I'm just wondering what kind of things we can do as a community, because I know we don't want it here, but what do we do, you know, to get it out more? Can we use the marquee, or there's certain things that we can put out there? I mean, I know I don't want my property value to go down, but if this goes through, that could also be a, you know, situation. The health, I was surprised how many people, the Army Corps of Engineers said that they didn't know why they were moving this. They were just told, hey, we're gonna move it from here to there. And then later it came out that, you know, they can't control it. They were meaning can't control it because they were having some kind of leak. I mean, what happens when it comes here and we can't control it all of a sudden, and then it's our expense to move it? There was no good response on how we handle our emergency. I'm very concerned about this, and I think, you know, as a community, we need to, you know, figure this out and get everybody involved, because one of Eagle's comments were also that nobody's out here, you know, protesting or saying no. So they thought it was okay to come and continue to accept this kind of waste or to allow it. And, you know, the other thing that concerns me is that they're running on an expired license and they want to expand. If they expand, is it on the current regulations and technology they have, or are they gonna have to upgrade? And these are all questions I have, and hopefully the, you know, rest of our community would. So I don't know where to find those questions or answers, or, again, if we can get a copy of the transcripts from the trial, any direction would be, you know,
I don't know if we can, I'm assume that you can get a transcript from the trial,
okay.
but we've given the best update we can. The board has authorized the lawsuit to protect the residents, and they've done their part. And I know they were at the town hall the other day, Trustee Boynton, Trustee Martin, and Trustee Frazier. And Treasurer Budd asked if she should go, and I said that we're gonna be well represented. So, step one is to try and stop it legally. I mean, it's the only way we're gonna do it, through the courts. And then step two is, to be honest, in my heart of hearts, nobody intended us to take nuclear waste. They intended this to be T-norm, which would, to everybody in the industry, is like gloves from an X-ray tech or Tyvek or things like that. So the problem is the way they wrote the law. They left a big, huge loophole in there, and you know, you're trucking in stuff that isn't T-norm even to us, and they're downblending it until it is T-norm. So we have to fix the law, so call your state rep, which I know Reggie Miller and Camilleri are working hard on getting that. Ultimately, that's probably where we're gonna have to be.
Thank you very much, and thank you for working on this and for bringing up the lawsuit.
Thanks. Anybody else wish to talk? Any other? Nope. Okay, board comments. I want to make one real quick because I neglected to do this. I want to thank Chief McAnally and Director Akers and Director Luckett, I saw, Director Selman. you have no idea how many documents they had to put together and read through, and, I mean, when they say 4,000 pages, I think we went through 10,000 pages to find those 4,000. So it was a lot of work that went on here for weeks, by these people, and thank you very much. And so many more people that I've forgotten to mention. Does the board wish to make any comments? Okay, call for adjournment. Got Boynton? Support by Martin, hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye, we are adjourned.